captain speaking. At this time, I'm going to ask you to fasten your seatbelts. Flight 527, runway 8 kilo. You're clear for takeoff.
Welcome to Morpheus Cyber Podcast. I'm Bill Alderson, your moderator. And as always, I'm joined by two guys who somehow keep getting invited back. Jim Rounsville, our resident tech prophet, who has never met a prediction he wouldn't double down on. And Gus Stein, the man who can find a cybersecurity angle in literally anything, including his own breakfast. Gentlemen, we have a packed show today, and who's going to take it away here first?
Yeah, I'm going to go start out right away. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Morpheus Cyber Podcast, as usual. And I'm Jim, and let's get right into it. So apparently there's a bunch of Americans going out there taking sledgehammers to these AI surveillance cameras. And for you that have not noticed, when you're driving down the freeways, there's these cameras on the side of the road pointing directly at the front of your vehicle and at the back of your vehicle. And what they're doing is they're picking up these license plates as you pass through. And that's for good and bad. We'll find out, because some people think it's bad and others think it's great. Now, personally, I have an opinion which I'll express as we get going here. But apparently these keyboard warriors didn't think that was enough to voice their complaints and things like deflog. Have you ever seen deflog? It's a website where you can find out where all the flock cameras are, these LPR cameras made by Flock. And apparently because they are so easily to be found on these maps, well, these Antifa types or these people who are independent thinkers, let's just put it that way, decided they don't think you should have them. And so they're out there with sledgehammers and these ladders and breaking these cameras. And so those cameras cost about $2,500 a piece. So there's definitely a cost and impact to the city or state or the feds, whoever's paying for them. But all of law enforcement uses those cameras. They're doing some destruction out there, but hey, as fast as they break them, I'm sure they're getting replaced too. And then things are going to morph over to a point where they're going to put them in these tamper-proof, not containers, but
sure, that's happening.
Enclosures. And yeah, it's happening already. So they're going to come
It
back.
reminds me of the old days when we were kids and you'd take a baseball bat and drive around and knock off post office boxes from people's hanging out.
So I checked to see if we have those cameras here in Austin, and Austin doesn't have them, not surprisingly.
I beg to differ, Jim.
Well, they're here in Leander.
No, I beg to differ. We have an enormous number of toll roads, and every one of those toll roads has front and back cameras, and they're up way up top. And yeah, they're taking pictures, and especially
It's
the
possible.
license plate, because they're trying to get revenue from that, right?
Yeah, it's very possible. I mean, when I did the search, I checked on Flock, and they said there aren't any Flock cameras in Austin. There are in Dallas and Leander and Cedar Park, but not in Austin proper. They did not allow them to put them in Austin, but they have them in San Diego, where you live. Yes,
they do.
Gus, you're under
'em.
surveillance. It's kind of like living in East Germany, right? There's cameras watching everything, everywhere you go, everything you do. Here's the difference, right? In America, if you go out and damage one of these cameras, you're probably not going to get shot in the back, because that's what they did in East Germany. You climbed over the wall, you did anything, and they just shoot you. So there's almost no lawlessness in those countries, because they just kill people who violate the law. And there's other countries that have similar, where they cut off your hand if you steal and that sort of thing. They have really good compliance laws. People don't offend. But we live in a free society, and the flock cameras or their equivalent are something that is relatively new.
Bill, I'm still battling with the image of you. I'm not sure if you're driving or not, but hitting these boxes with a baseball.
I never did that, by the way, but it's on a lot of movies. It's on a lot of movies and that sort of thing. Now, I did my share of vandalism as a teen and a preteen.
But not about vandalism. I was into shoplifting.
Okay.
That was my thing. We'd have contests, who could walk into a record store and walk out with the most. It wasn't whether you could be per two. You didn't walk out with 6 or 7. And I had this special long jacket that had the inside of the pockets. I cut them. So
Oh,
my jacket would be wide open. I'm walking past, and it was a game. But anyway, looking at these cameras, I'm undecided. It's a tough one. Half of me says that crime's down 10 to 15% in the areas where they have these flock cameras. That's a good thing, right? But then I do feel a little bit dystopian and Big Brother and all that stuff. And I don't know what my opinion is in the middle. I guess
weird.
I would pick to keep them because I like being safe.
Yeah.
So my business in California, I still have a company there, and we do video surveillance, and a lot of that includes some LPR cameras at gates and those kinds of entryways. Because we want to, especially into government facilities, they always have an LPR camera that's watching every vehicle that comes in or out, so they can actually track who came in, what time of the day. So it's employee, non-employee, yeah, either one, but probably used more so against their own employees. You can think about. So you got to think, I see the necessity of that. I think the big complaint of these attackers on these cameras is that they feel like no one asked us if you can put that out there and if you can monitor our vehicles. You didn't even put it out to a vote. You just did it. And I think that is a valid argument. They probably should have just said, in general public, here's what's going on. When you see these cameras out here, this is what they're for. And then talk up the good side of things. Like, look, it allows us to catch all these bad guys that are out there, stolen vehicles, people that did a crime in a particular kind of vehicle, hit and run. In fact, it can even track autonomous vehicles if autonomous vehicles are not behaving correctly. So there's some real value in watching these things as proof of how things are going on the freeways around town, because these are not just on the freeways. They're pretty much at almost every stoplight. So if you look,
What would our forefathers say? Is this a violation of the Fourth Amendment?
You really can't compare. Why? Because it's a completely different day and a different set of risks and a different set of violations. Now, let me blow your mind a little bit. When we were in Iraq, one of the systems that I helped diagnose problems with was a dossier system that had biometric enrollments, which means they took iris scans, fingerprints, facial recognition, voice recognition, and they put it into an enrollment. And then they had that so that whenever you'd come across a checkpoint in Iraq or Afghanistan, the guard or our soldiers would say, put your finger on this platen. They'd put the finger on the platen, and it would come up, and there was a watch list on there of 30,000 people who were bad guys. And so now, and the reason why I say that is because it's classified as to what distance you can do a definitive biometric iris scan. Okay. Imagine when you're walking through, and I've been at conferences and that sort of thing where they had these makeshift company entry doors, and you'd go over and you'd enroll with your eye, and then you'd just walk through the doors and it would say, "Good morning, Mr. Alderson," or what have you. Because it was getting iris scans. And then once you're enrolled, then it's a form of security. It's almost as good as a retina scan, right? So you can identify people definitively. Now, when these flock cameras get iris scan resolution, that's when you're really going to say, whoa, that's like taking a fingerprint off of somebody while they're driving down the road.
Yeah, certainly these are vehicles' fingerprint, essentially.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything about them. Yeah. And I think if we look at the good side of things first and we say, look, how many crimes does it solve? How many times do they find a bad guy quickly? Whenever there's a major killing or some sort of a murder like that, everyone's on call to try to find this person as quickly as possible. Time is the most important, especially if there's a kidnapping. And these vehicle cameras have solved more of those problems than people can understand. That's how they catch them so fast, because those cameras are everywhere and they're able to be seen. The other side of it is if you have a regular pattern of getting up at a certain time or certain days of the week and going to these places that would be considered houses of worship or going to Bible studies, and that's your consistent routine back and forth, you set a pattern for yourself. I'm a Christian. That's what it spells out. I'm a Christian. I'm doing these things. Same thing as if you go to a mosque. So you're constantly going to a mosque. That means I'm a Muslim. So now you set this criteria that goes into a database. And like it or not, it's there in the database. And now the FBI, the CIA, all of them can actually make these assumptions. AI will make them for them. They don't have to be looking for them. AI is going to say, I noticed this particular license plate is doing this routine, and this is what it probably means. And that's going to happen. And unfortunately, we just have to understand that somebody uses it for the wrong purposes is what we're concerned about. But if you use it for the good purposes to find a culprit or bad guy, hey, I'm all up for that.
Hey, now there's also other podcasts who are talking about this recently. Peter Diamandis on Moonshots mentioned this, and he says, hey, we already have these dense surveillance networks with cameras spotting everyone. This technology already exists. And so obviously this is not something new, but it is in the news and people are talking about it. And with the recent abduction of Nancy Guthrie in Tucson, this is a key situation, right? Because if we had a picture of her in some vehicle with the license plate, and that's what they've been scouring all of those license plate readers all over Tucson. And it's been like several weeks and they haven't found anything from those as yet that we are aware of.
And even though Peter's saying that these have been around for a long time, AI has not. So these that I was just talking about, that's what people are concerned about, that AI will make these inferences from different patterns. And that's what AI is all about, pattern matching. I see a pattern. Is this an important pattern? Should I tell you it's an important pattern? And that's going to come up in our next segment too.
Yeah. Now, the other podcast that talked about this was the All In podcast, right? The billionaire podcast, because we are the sub-billionaire podcast and All In is the billionaire podcast. But anyway, Garrett Langley from Flock Safety, the folks who produce those cameras, was on and he talked about it. So if you're interested, you can go back to December 2025 and find that episode if you're looking for more information.
And Flock is not the only company out there that does this. I mean, there are other competitors, so it isn't like Flock is the only camera company out there doing this. There are multiple camera companies that are doing this. Roughly 3 large manufacturers, LPR cameras, that are providing this kind of service. So don't go and pick on Flock. There's a few others too. So they're all doing this. So it's the government who's made a decision. Look, we need some tools that are going to help us catch the bad guys quicker.
I know, Bill, you said it's outdated, but good old Benjamin Franklin, famous for saying that those who would give up essential liberty to purchase temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety.
Yeah.
And I think there's a certain amount of truth to that. That's my dilemma. You know, when my daughter gets kidnapped, I'm hoping that the cameras catch them. It's a tough one. Yeah. Well, hey, maybe it's a good time to segue into our next segment, which is Jim is related. And imagine for a moment and think about a dystopian scenario like this. An AI chatbot turns you in as a potential threat because of conversation that you had with them. And then the AI company debates as to whether to call the cops and turn you in. But see, that's actually what happened. This isn't science fiction. ChatGPT was talking to a school shooter who told of the plans, what they were going to do a couple days before. And the shooting happened earlier this month up in Canada. Yeah, so allegedly, OpenAI was aware of this threat. They debated it for 24 hours and decided not to turn them in, but actually just shut down the fellow's account. And now, to be clear, ChatGPT did not assist with any violent behavior, but it was aware of it. And here we go again. It's privacy versus safety. And I don't know, where do you guys fall on this one?
I think if AI can prevent a catastrophic harm to another person, I think it's necessary. That does mean it's Big Brother again. Like I told you guys in previous episodes, I turn off the microphones on my Amazon devices because I just don't want it listening to me. And it's not even, I think, something underhanded is being done there. I think it's really, I just don't want it telling me what I should buy next and things like that. It's just an intrusion in my life, and so I just don't want it. And it's just weird to have know something about me when I haven't even asked for that. So you already know it's happening now. So a lot of things, your choices, your favorites, those kinds of things, are happening without you even asking. So if it can actually do something more meaningful, save a life, I'm on that side of it.
So I'm conflicted as well. So here's part of the issue. This is like censorship. This is like surveillance. And as we well know, whether it's political surveillance or Oppo research or whatever, like right now, France is saying we can't have any misinformation, but yet here in the US, we allow misinformation under the free speech. So it all comes down to roost on who gets to decide what is misinformation, because they can decide, oh, this is my political opponent. I'm going to force this into some type of, this guy does porn, this guy does that, this guy does the other thing, because they have the power to do this. And so what they're basically saying, and what Elon Musk says about X is, hey, buyer beware. Yes, there can be misinformation, but that's free speech. Here's the problem. When you finally start clamping down like they are in the UK and in France, who's to say that they're not your opposition? Who's to say they're not your competitor? And they're operating these systems, and then they decide to target you. And so that's why this is dangerous, right? Who gets to decide when to turn someone in and who to turn in? Because it's a double-edged sword. What can be used to help you find someone can also be used to help convict you inappropriately. And here in the US, we know that the FISA warrants and all that can be used for bad things. And I don't know. I'm conflicted. I don't know exactly which way, because it basically means that the party in charge or in power gets to decide what misinformation is, and it may not be in your favor.
That's two different subjects, one about free speech and monitored free speech. And that's what we're saying, I guess, to prevent a crime, like what Minority Report was all about, predetermining where this person might be starting to get to a place where they're going to commit an actual crime or
Where
something like
that line, and I think that's Bill's point, is that someone needs to decide when they're tracking your buying habits, which is annoying, and when it might save a life, and there's gradients of truth there.
That's why there's discussion, right? That's why we're having the discussion, right? Eventually there will be some guidelines put in place, but that everything we talk about every week, right, Gus, is every week we talk about that's the guardrails, who's in charge of the guardrail. And so we have to say, look, we have to voice our opinion as people, but if those that represent represent us to protect us aren't doing a good job, then who's going to do that? And there's a quote that I always like, and it's by Edmund Burke, and it says, when good men do nothing, right, something like that, then the evil triumphs. I don't have the quote exactly. And I always think about that, because if we have the ability and we don't do it, then evil prevails. So we've got to make a decision. So guardrails is the answer. We still should do this. We still should move ahead with somebody who's already looking up how to create a bomb, looking at all the maps around a particular
the red
building.
Flag laws. That's what we're talking about. It's the red flag laws.
And they're doing that. The FBI has been doing that for a while. But
if you ask the 8 families that had a death in their family up in Canada, and there was 25 injured, I think if you ask their relatives, that'd be an easy question to answer. We tend to be that way as humans, that we don't, until it affects us personally, we're ambivalent. It was interesting to me, that to think about the conversation that they were having, OpenAI, that is, should we act on this or not? They're liable either way, and they could be. And I'm sure that's what the conversation is, probably a very interesting conversation, because if we don't say anything, damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing.
Exactly.
Well, I guess this expands into every area of our lives. If you have cameras that are watching healthcare facilities, things like that, and certain actions that are happening, should we be monitoring that from a public perspective so that we don't see abuse taking place?
Not only that, but HIPAA laws. So if you're seen walking into an HIV clinic, what does that tell your insurance provider?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a funny story about that too, but I think I'll keep it to myself.
What? Yeah.
Hey,
Good Lord.
listen, this might be a good time to go to our next segment. I've been vibe coding for a little over a year now, and I just love it. Just
Fine.
recently,
For me.
yeah, vibe coding where you're using AI to write code. And one of the big providers of that is Claude, and their product is called Claude Code. So there's basically three products in the Claude family. There's the basic Claude that's just like OpenAI. There's Claude Code, which helps you program. And then there's this new Claude Cowork.
Security.
Claude Cowork. And then in addition, there's an add-on now to Claude Code, which is called Claude Code Security.
Mm.
And this is a brand new offering, and they just announced it last week. And what happened when they announced it?
Stock went down quickly.
CrowdStrike, Cloudflare, whole bunch of companies lost
All these
billions of
security
dollars in the security world, and it just misaligned all of their stock values. And so why? The president of CrowdStrike went into Claude and asked it the question, Claude, can you create a system that will replicate or improve on what CrowdStrike is doing? And Claude came back and said, of course not. So essentially, the stock market's very sensitive, especially because it's up at such an elevated level, and AI is very sensitive. But in this particular case, they basically gave to AI a much higher weighting factor to say, okay, if Claude Code Security can replace Cloudflare, can replace these other things in these security companies, and the value of those are going to go down. Yeah, it's a big potential problem there. And all of those guys, those companies were out there commenting on LinkedIn and X and stuff like that, and just basically saying, hey, this is a misnomer. The value of our stock is not diminished because of Claude Code Security.
Yeah, it enhances like.
Because
Go
Billy,
ahead.
a year ago, I was very impressed by your kind of futuristic thinking. And you were on your soapbox talking about how AI is going to replace a lot of the security tools who don't adopt AI. And I think that's where you're going with this. But I think what we're seeing is a little bit of what you predicted.
And remind me.
Well, with the GPU and the DPU coming on and allowing faster processing and more effective correlation and all this stuff, we're looking at a modern day firewall, completely AI.
Yeah.
And so I get why the stock went down. I think it's a further looking thing. They're going, hey, pretty soon, because they looked at the coding, right? You're doing all the vibe coding, right? And we just talked about all the other companies are using it to code now. They're going, this is going to knock out. We're spending big bucks on this. And if AI can do it faster and more effectively, I'm selling my stock.
Yeah.
I think there's not just they're worried about it doing it faster, is that they're worried that it's going to just do it differently and do something that completely changes the market. And that's why the stocks dropped like they did, because those people that are investors are not necessarily technical. Some are. But if you can see the writing on the wall that AI is just taking over every industry everywhere because it finds a better way to do it. If we can think it can think it faster. If we can come up with correlations, it's already done it 1,000 times over before we thought about even looking at it. So it's inevitable that this ability for those coding platforms with AI attached to it are going to say, I see a better way. And what you're doing over here, what you're seeing a product over here, it knows what that product can do. It already knows what all these other products can do. So it's going to say, is that the most efficient way to do it, and come up with a different way? And all of these other security companies are saying, we didn't see this one coming. All of a sudden, we have a competitor that is going to probably eat our lunch, and we've got to hurry up and catch up or integrate it so tightly that as it progresses, we progress.
So let's put some guardrails on this a little bit. Claude Code is a product that helps you write code. It writes all kinds of code. It does a spectacular job. A year ago,
It's true.
not so much. It just came out just a little under a year ago, and it's progressed and it's gotten better and better. And Claude Code has gotten a lot of kudos because it is very effective. Now they're using, and they're calling this Claude Code Security. And its focus is on, for instance, all of those open source projects that are out there, right? Everybody knows of an open source project and you can go download it for free. You can use it, but there are holes in that open source software. And one of the things that Claude Code is doing is they're offering this free or giving access to the guys who are doing open source software so they can scan that open source software to find vulnerabilities. And when they started doing this, guess what they found? They found 500 plus high-severity vulnerabilities in hours across major open source projects. So what is an open source project? It means that it's on GitHub or something, and that repo where they keep all the code is stored. So you can go pull that open code and then you can load it. You can then look at it in Claude Code and then apply Claude Code Security to it, and it'll find the vulnerabilities in the software that's written, right? So it's pretty powerful. And they found a lot of stuff. And so it had a huge $15 billion market correction, and people didn't really even understand what it was about. It was about those open source directories. And so they're doing this now. Yeah.
So the Department of War is now saying, look, we need to get AI integrated into our function as well. And they're very concerned that with AI capability, other countries are actually already putting that, like China's already integrating AI defense right into their weapon systems. And I know we're doing the same, but I think that, Bill, you were saying something. I think that Anthropic was actually approached by the War Department. I think somebody said that.
Yeah, the Anthropic is a bit ambivalent because some of their employees don't want it used for war things. But on the other hand, just last week, the Chinese government or the Chinese were into Claude Code and stealing Claude Code's great capabilities. And so guess what? So Anthropic won't let the U.S. government or allies use it for defense contracting. But the issue is, but then they left themselves wide open and the Chinese went and got it. Now, do you think the Chinese are keeping all of this technology out of their companies? Heck no, they're stealing it to apply it. And so we have some very key critical ideas to think about. This idea that you can say, okay, I'm a pacifist. Let me just tell you about pacifists. Albert Einstein was a pacifist. He's the one who wrote the letter to get the Manhattan Project started. I can show you a copy of it. Why? Because the Germans were so egregious. He wanted the nuclear weapon not used against the Japanese. He wanted it used against the Germans because he knew how egregiously bad they were and that they wanted to take over the entire world. Even the pacifist gets to a point where they look at that weighting factor. Is it better to let the Chinese have all this technology, or should we have it so we can protect ourselves a little bit? And these are the weighting factors. These are all the things that we're talking about, whether it's cameras or code or security. It doesn't matter. We are all in a quandary about when and where we apply these things, right? And so these are the topics of the day.
I'll tell you why we should use it as a defensive measure, because guess who's using it as an offensive measure? All the bad guys got the same access to AI and they're attacking, and we need AI as a defense mechanism for that reason.
Yeah, because if we don't, what's going to happen? We're going to let all the bad guys in the world, North Korea, Russia, China have all these tools and capabilities, and then we're going to be standing in a puddle of piss with a snot bubble hanging out of our nose when they start firing on us using.
Wonder where your 401k went.
Exactly.
Yeah, scary stuff.
Yeah.
I think the greatest progress is that we're going to see in our lifetime are going to come from AI and quantum together, right? It has to be every part of our lives, because if we don't, someone else will. And that's always what we say, taking a position of strength, right? So peace through strength. So if we can be the first ones to have the upper hand, we can promote, look, we're going to cause you to stand down because we have the bigger weapons. Again, there's a morality import to this, and we hope that always we're the guys on the right side. We don't want to ever be the guys on the wrong side. And I would give a percentage of the United States probably thinks we're on the wrong side always. I don't believe that. I believe
it's a small percentage, and they're very vocal. Let me tie a bow on this. As a vibe coder extraordinaire, I have like about 5 or 6 different major projects that I've created, and very powerful projects using vibe coding. And consequently, when I use my applications, I secure a lot of it with Cloudflare. Cloudflare is one of the companies that got harmed by their value going down about 8% on the fact that Claude Code Security came out. Let me just tell you, Claude Code Security, and when I use Claude Code, it helps me configure Cloudflare and the hundreds of parameters on their web application firewalls and all the various things that they do. I could not ever get my head around the hundreds of parameters to protect our applications like Cloudflare can without using Claude Code, an AI system, to help me apply it. And that's one of the things that we're learning to deal with. I could never do the kind of software and security capabilities that I'm doing right now without the assistance of Claude Code. But now Claude Code Security, and that is Claude Code has intrinsically all these security capabilities. So you can use it to protect your websites and all of your systems, but those capabilities of protecting it in Cloudflare are very complex. So if anything, Cloudflare's stock should have gone up. Why? Because Claude Code is an enabler and perfectly applies a very complex set of protections within Cloudflare to make it viable. That's the whole situation. And so when I saw this, I wrote some articles, I went and did some social media, and that's where CrowdStrike said, hey, these guys can't replace us. The Cloudflare, the same thing. If anything, all of those stocks that went down should have probably gone up. Why? Because Claude Code and Claude Code Security is an enabler to more perfectly apply that technology of those platforms than without them.
All right, Jim, we're going to go out and some Cloud stocks lower according to Uncle Bill.
Probably a smart thing to do, that's for sure. Probably.
Yeah. Maybe it's
like
time for a donut break.
Donuts.
Police with their license plate readers. Now we're going to talk about what?
Well, batteries. Yeah, solid state batteries by a company called Donut Labs. And it's funny that donut kind of applies to their technology because the battery that they created is in the shape of a donut and have kind of air cooling that goes through. A cool thing. So this company called Donut Labs is potentially solving a real world problem for AI in the sense that they have faster recharge times. They have increased battery capacity and huge amount of weight reduction. So they've released kind of their first test results for the charging rate and also the capacity rate. So there's a full table, and you can go to the Donut Labs website and see that testing. And it shows you by proof of how they have such a fast charge rate that they can charge 80% capacity within 4.5 minutes. So we're talking about batteries now that can recover very quickly with less heat and more capacity with faster charge time. So
isn't heat a real big problem with some of the other battery types? And they'll blow up, they'll catch on fire and that sort of thing. So I guess this technology expands and reduces the risk for that. Wow.
For sure. And normally battery packs are liquid cooled, of some sort of liquid to cool it, to keep that charge. When it's in a high charging rate, they heat up very fast. So just to give you an example, if you need a 75 kilowatt battery pack, like with a lithium battery today, and lithium returns 250 watt hours of power per kilogram. So to get to 75 kilowatts, the weight equals out to about 664 pounds. The same battery, a solid state battery, instead of a lithium battery, for the same amount of output, 75 kilowatt, the total weight for that battery pack is 413 pounds. That's 240 pounds less. So it is serious. It's something that manufacturers are looking at. There is only one product out there right now that's using that solid state battery from Donut, and that's Verge e-bikes. I saw that on a video on YouTube, and it's a very cool bike.
Did you buy one yet, Jim?
No, I can't afford it. I'm not that kind of guy. I don't have that kind of money
We're
for that.
sub-billionaires. We can't do it.
I guess if I sell my motorcycle, I could buy an e-bike. So probably the thing I should be doing. My wife probably wants me off of that motorcycle anyhow. Anyway, so if you get an e-bike like that, you can get that thing charged back up in about 5 to 7 minutes, and it's good for another 30 miles. Yeah, and I think it's going to be great for the market, great for robotics in general because of the lighter weight. So imagine now 75 kilowatts only weighing, what did I say, 413 pounds, I think is what it was.
Seems like a lot. When you started talking, I was thinking that it was a donut-sized battery. You're talking about a big donut.
A big donut. Yeah, kind of like Round Rock Donuts. I don't know if you guys are aware, but in Austin, we have Round Rock Donuts, and they make like a gigantic donut over there. So Round Rock Donuts.
Do they sell their donut holes and like basketballs or something?
There you go.
Yeah. Really interesting, Jim.
Yeah, I think the key is that there's less heat, which is always a big danger in electric cars. The electric vehicles, they get in an accident, there's a short, those kinds of things. Less of a problem with solid state batteries. There's less lithium involved. Lithium is, you don't want to have lithium in a fire, hard to put it out. So it's actually a good thing to go towards solid state. But just let's be honest about it, it is just testing right at this stage. And there's only one vehicle, that's that Verge e-bike that's out there. But it's proving that it can be used for that purpose.
So where do you think the best application of this is, Jim?
Certainly in robots, that the longer lifespan of a battery, because what good is a robot if, like we talked, I think it was an episode on the robot dogs that are going to be at the World Cup. What good is a robot dog if every 2 hours he's got to run back and get charged up? You want,
or if he's in hot pursuit and he runs out of juice.
Yeah. What about a robot in your home? See, I have this problem with my little robot vacuum cleaner. It's smart. It has to recharge itself mid-cycle because it cleans the whole house. If you want to do it at full vacuum, it takes more battery power. So it has to recharge midway. So the house is only halfway vacuum before it finishes up, or 2/3 possibly. But
it's with cool the way it just turns around and goes back to its charging station.
It does. I don't do anything. It goes back
to the same spot.
It plays this little chime when it gets back to its dock, and then it chimes again when it takes off again, so I know it's out and running. Plus, my little app shows it's cleaning again, so it is cool. Both my sisters have bought vacuums since we talked about it.
What's an example of AI replacing humans? Because I'm going, do I really need Lori still? This thing's doing all the vacuuming.
Oh, Gus,
he doesn't watch.
I hope your wife doesn't watch the pod.
She doesn't watch, so it doesn't matter. She goes, "You guys are too smart. I can't figure it out."
Donut Labs is not the only company out there. Donut Labs is one company out of multiple that have been working on the solid state batteries. And one of the leading companies out there is actually Toyota. They've got more patents than anybody on this, and they're getting extremely close to putting it in vehicles. So they actually have a prototype. So they're further along than everybody. But the reason I like Donut is because I was watching that video on those Verge e-bikes, and man, that thing was so cool. So if you haven't seen that video, go find it. Just look up Donut Labs, and it'll show up with the Verge motorcycle as one of their main partnerships.
Neat. One of the things, just to put some specifics around it, is in a robot, it can get 18 hours of continuous operation from one of these type of things, 6 times longer than current AI robot battery life. So that's a measurable improvement. And the safety of the donut batteries is improved dramatically as well. And it may be like right now, you go on a flight and you can take these lithium ion batteries in your carry-on, but you cannot put it in the checked baggage. Because why? Because if they do start on fire and it's in the overhead compartment, you can get something and put the fire out. And so it's in a place where and you can control it. Whereas if it's in the baggage compartment, you can't. So these batteries are probably going to be the preferred method for charging for laptops and a lot of other things because of the fire hazard improvement.
And the fire, you got the longer run time, you got the smaller footprint, you have
Almost
the whole
double.
temperature thing. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost double the runtime, which is for less weight. That's going to be
Absolutely.
amazing. It's not here, but it's coming.
Yeah.
The
I read
fire
somewhere
risk is reduced. That's great.
I read somewhere they've been saying that these sort of things are coming in 5 years, and they've been saying that for 15 years.
Yeah.
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 Now there's a company actually testing it in front of the whole world. So that's pretty real.
And interestingly, it's not just us talking about this. When we choose our topics, we also look at what other people have talked about. Laura Shin recently discussed how robotic accelerators are tied to asset insurance platforms and all sorts of things about AI deployments. It's not just us talking about it. So if you want a little more information, you can go out and find Laura's topics on that and to add to that particular information.
Correct.
I think probably does it for today's episode. So we started out talking about smashing surveillance cameras, and then we went into the realization that AI isn't limited by its code. It's really about where it has market use.
You know what Antifa should do? Antifa should get the robots to go smash the cameras.
Not quite there yet, but it probably will be in the future.
Yes,
Yeah,
I don't think you need to give them any ideas like that.
Well,
They're just
the
Americans.
companies that solve these problems first are the ones that are going to get to market first, and they're going to control the future. So that's why there's so much money being thrown at all that.
Now, is that a public
AI
company?
No, Donut's not yet.
San Francisco startup.
They're
I think so.
They're looking at-
They're Finnish. They're from Finland.
Oh, are
Are
they?
they?
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. They're looking at that market to be like a $9 billion market by 2030. So it's definitely growing and it's out there. So guys, unless you have something else to add, listen, please click the subscribe button, like, share, etc., comment. And we always appreciate you guys. We'll be looking for you next week on Morpheus Cyber Podcast.
At this time, I'm going to ask you to fasten your seatbelts.
On behalf of the flight crew, thank you for flying with us and have a pleasant day.